Beards, Books, and Bourbon is a spoiler-rich environment. If you haven't read or listened to this book, then you should probably go ahead and do that, because we're going to talk about it, and we're going to say all the stuff that you don't want us to say. So go back and read it, or listen to it on audiobook, and then come back and listen to us. Thanks so much, and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to Beards, Books, and Bourbon for another episode. We are in season 6 at this point. And we have an awesome guest tonight. As we've told you before, one of our goals in season 6 is to expand Beards, Books, and Bourbon to actually start to talk to bourbon people, right? Yeah. Bourbon distillers, bourbon masters, bourbon brands.
We've been teasing this. We talked about it in the season finale. You've seen it, or you've heard a couple of little 5-minute snippets that we had from the Bourbon Fest that we did over the summer to tease what was going on. And you may have noticed that one of those snippets that we heard was from the distillery Chicken Cock. And that's appropriate.
And it's very appropriate because this evening we are joined by Will Woodington, who is the National Brand Manager.
Ambassador.
He's
an ambassador.
Even better. National Brand Ambassador.
I think like if everybody in DC spontaneously explodes, he becomes president.
That's right. Yeah. You're far down on the list of the right. I'd like to be an ambassador. One of these days, maybe we will be ambassadors of either podcasting, or maybe even bourbon, or maybe just.
But I mean, with our luck, we'd be the co-ambassadors of Guam or something.
That might be.
That's what it would be.
we are excited to actually launch our first episode here with a national brand ambassador from a well-known, popular, famous, and well-storied bourbon distillery in the United States here, Chicken Cock. So welcome, Will Woodington. We are grateful to have you here, and thanks for spending some time with us.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I told you this in all candid, nature, but I'm not the biggest reader, but I do love many audiobooks. I love learning, and I wouldn't be part of this brand representing the way I did if I didn't love history and soaking in as much as I can. So thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and then that's what our goal is, to start to share with our listeners, kind of the world of bourbon in a little bit of a different way than we normally do.
Right.
We've built Beards, Books, and Bourbon around the books and our tasting of the bourbon, as well as some of the stuff that we bring in from the events that we go to.
Yep.
But now we're going to start touching on actually talking to the masters of the craft and bringing them into the podcast themselves.
So for tonight, we're not going to cover a specific book. Instead, what we want to do is we want to share with our listeners the story of Chicken Cock. And so, we'll lay it out with the idea of, every story has a place and a time. It has a setting. It has a cast of main characters at the very beginning. It has kind of a goal at the very beginning of how they rise. Usually, and I think this is pretty true of a lot of distilleries of bourbon in the United States, if they started in the 1800s, that they've had times of crisis, but then they've risen above that in one way or another, and their brand and their story continues. So that's kind of how we want to focus on this tonight. But before we do that, 1, 2, 3. That's right, folks. Tonight, we are not going to cover one bourbon or two bourbons. No. The folks at Chicken Cock have been exceedingly generous, and we are going to cover 3 bourbons. So let me very quickly. Tonight's bourbon is Chicken Cock Small Batch Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, the famous old brand established in 1856. It is 50% alcohol by volume, 100 proof. We'll talk more about that shortly. Also, tonight's bourbon is Chicken Cock Double Oak Kentucky Whiskey, the famous old brand established 1856. This is 46% alcohol by volume, 92 proof. And tonight's bourbon is Chicken Cock Miller's Reserve American Whiskey, the famous old brand established in 1856, aged 8 to 10 years, 57.5% alcohol by volume, 115 proof, 4 states, 1 spirit. I'm excited.
Me too, very much so. All right, we have yabbered enough on the introduction, so Will, we're going to hand it over to you for a moment. Let's start off with the beginning of the story. Give us a little introduction of you, yourself. I did a little bit of your title, but give us a little bit more, and then the beginning stories of Chicken Cock.
Yeah. So, like I said, national brand ambassador for the brand. I've been in this position coming up on 3 years this January. And I hail from the Metro Detroit area, born and raised in this area. Everybody thinks that I'm from Kentucky, just given the nature of my career. But no, I'm situated in a little bit of a colder climate. Yeah, I've like I said, been with the company coming up on 3 years, and since then it's just been amazing to watch this brand continue to rise in popularity, surge in interest, and we're doing a lot of really fun, amazing things. I got into this, I was in the automotive industry for quite a while here, being in Michigan almost a decade. Throughout that time, I gained my own, passion and knowledge base for the whiskey industry and its history. And eventually I wanted to weave my way into the industry. I just didn't know how that would be and which brand it would be for. But I knew that whatever brand I'd represent in an education and amplification sort of standpoint like I am now, it'd have to be something I fully believed in, from the liquid to the story to, the whole ethos of it. So Cock exemplifies all that. Going to the original roots of the brand, let's just get the elephant out of the room, because the number one question that we get is, how in the hell did you guys come up with that name? I mean, what compels somebody to go and name a brand Chicken Cock in 2025?
I have to tell you, the conversation that we had before we turned on the Zoom meeting was, we are not going to talk about the name of the product. If he wants to talk about it, great. We're not bringing it up.
No. It's a double-edged sword having to speak about it on such a frequent basis. The good part of that sword being the fact that it's the best conversation starting name in the brand, or in the industry, I should say.
Yeah, sure.
It opens up that door, and people want to know, how the hell did you come up with that? And then we have to tell them how old we are, and it starts this whole thing. So we're very lucky to have the name that we do, but it's all rooted in history. You have to keep several things in mind when you're speaking about a brand like Chicken Cock. It predates bourbon itself, right? Bourbon didn't become America's native spirit until 1964 officially, so it predates that by over 100 years. It also predates, one of the most storied, famous old distilleries here in America is Jack Daniel's, and I love Jack. I love what they do, but we predate them by 10 years. So that's one of the oldest brands that people think of in the American story. And then additionally, most importantly, we predate the popularity of the term rooster here in the United States. It wasn't until the 1890s when roosters started coming about. And before then, you called the old chicken a chicken cock or a cock. Well, guess what? Pretty much every early 1800s whiskey brand was started by a farmer. They had excess corn crops, the means to distill, and places to age barrels. So what do those farmers name their brands after? Farm animals, right? You had a lot of birds in the mix. You had Kentucky Owl, Old Crow, Peacock Distillery. There were a lot of birds in there, like I said. So Chicken Cock fit right into that. And the way that was started was by a man named James A. Miller. And he was a farmer in Bourbon County. He started distilling whiskey on his farm in the late 1830s. So our distilling roots go back even further. And he had a lot of acclaim and success over the course of a decade plus from his farming, from his whiskey he was making and selling. And by 1856, he was able to open up his proper distillery in Paris, Kentucky, the Chicken Cock Distillery. And away he went. That was kind of the inception of it. This farmer who started a grassroots brand there in Bourbon County, one of the earliest bourbon brands in America's history. So Things went super well for the guy for a few years, but they took a turn in the year 1860. And there's a little good tidbit once we get more into the history that ties into that Miller's Reserve bottle you got back there.
And when we were at the bourbon event that I mentioned to you a little bit earlier, Grays Lake, Illinois does a fantastic bourbon fest every year. It's about 13 or 1400 people who attend that, and this is where we met one of your colleagues who put us into touch with you then, and of course they had some swag along with the bourbon tasting, so there were hats, of course, and we both got a hat, and
the very next day, I find my 14-year-old son walking around with the chicken cock hat on, because how do you keep a 14-year-old boy from something like that? Right?
Yes, and my son is 15, right. And I had it sitting on the counter, and I came downstairs, and he's like, Dad, what's this?
No doubt.
But talk about conversation starters, right? I mean, that could be that gets you in.
I wore that hat to a Home Depot, and I got stopped by 3 different people asking me what that was about.
That's right. That's right.
Now imagine somebody in my position. Most of right. my attire that I wear on a daily basis has chicken cock on it in some way, shape, or form. And I go across the nation doing this stuff, so I'm in and out of airports constantly, and the looks, the questions, all that stuff. Nonstop.
The branding, everything. Yeah, you're imagine. Even your shirt now has it on there, right? You got it. You got it right there. That's right. That's fantastic. Nice. That's fantastic. When you spoke a moment ago about shifting your career from the automotive industry, you knew you had a passion. You knew you wanted to get into the world of bourbon and so on and so forth. What were some of the initial steps that led you to chicken cock? I mean, I'm assuming you probably were exploring all of your options, and what drew you to that one?
Yeah, again,
besides employment, of course, right? Yeah, besides employment, like what drew you?
Right. Hey, paycheck helps, right? But,
right.
Paycheck 401k.
When I was initially sort of soft looking into getting into the bourbon industry, when I was still employed at that automotive place, I really didn't know which brand it would be. And to be honest with you, I didn't have direct, liquor industry experience. I'd never worked behind a bar. I'd never been a mixologist. But what I had done over the course of however many years is built a huge collection, of course, but with that wasn't just, hey, look at all my prized bottles. It was, I can tell you about each and every one of those. I can break down the flavor profile. I can educate you on the brand's history. I can do all these things. And I knew for sure that by getting into the industry, I didn't just simply want to get into it in the capacity of like a salesperson, because at that point I would have to wake up every day and sell what is my passion. And I felt like that would deteriorate it a little, right? So I definitely wanted a position that would give me the opportunity to educate, amplify a brand, really talk to people and engage with people one-on-one. And this obviously is that perfect mold. But in terms of picking the brand, I used to be part of this bigger group called the Bourbon Alliance. And we used to interview distilleries from across the nation, especially during COVID year, because COVID, every distillery was essentially shut down, no tours going on. So they were bringing the experience to the digital masses. And in that capacity, I was sort of on the other side of the table there, interviewing people. And Chicken Cock is actually one of the brands that I interviewed in 2020. So that was actually my first introduction to the brand. They had really only gotten things going at that point for really just a couple of years at that point. So the brand wasn't where it is at now. But that was my first introduction of it, and kind of learning, I had the jaw-dropping moment of what did I just receive in the mail? What do these samples say? What is this brand? Through a loop. But the more you get educated on it, the more you want to peel back those onion layers and really just get to all the history of it. And I just find it fascinating. So having 170 years behind us, is a lot to dive into, for sure, a lot to lean into.
I think that segues into the next question here, because we showed you kind of we have 147 bottles in our collection here, right? And some of them are empties, which we have an app that records all of our collection, so we know where we've been, where we're going.
All different price points.
All different price points. We added the 3 bottles to that so that we had that in our collection. But but whiskey is storytelling, right? Bourbon is storytelling. So chicken cock has that story. You've mentioned a little bit now about its history, but give us the story of chicken cock. I mean, I'm not expecting you to, like to tell us, from the beginning, but what underlies chicken cock that helps you as the brand ambassador tell the story, both history wise and, here's a bottle that you want to have.
Right.
Yeah. There's there were thousands of bourbon brands that existed pre-prohibition, right? When prohibition hit, it took out thousands. There are so many that we could have plucked from who were around for maybe 5 or 10 years, way back in the heyday. Nobody's paying attention to anymore. We could have, picked that brand. This brand, what makes it so different is that it had one of the highest quality reputations in the entire nation. At one point in the 1880s, it was the only functioning distillery in Bourbon County due to the financial crisis. There were imitators trying to capitalize off of its success. So these guys were one of the first to use the official barrel stamp and trademarked the brand way back in 1874.
Really?
Not only did it survive through Prohibition, it was made during it in two different forms. There's so much rich history in there. But one of the underlying things is that I've said this before a bunch, but there are 1,000 reasons why chicken cock should not exist in 2025. And there are tons of reasons I can give you why it shouldn't have even survived until 1950 when it kind of went away. It's the most resilient brand in my eyes for that reason. Again, you can start with the name. You can go, oh, it's a faux pas. It sounds oddball in 2025 to be having chicken cock on the shelf or drinking chicken cock or this or that. You can just start with that as a base level, but then you can get into the distillery fires that occurred, prohibition, the fact that, quality had dipped and ownership changed and fires occurred. All these other things that point to reasons why the brand should not exist or be around. And it just is continuing to come back. And now it's surging again in 2025. So
it's a storied story, right? It's got a resilience that, that gives us a chance to understand where that comes from. Right.
So when old Farmer Miller opened up the distillery proper, in those first 4 years, what was that like? I mean, is he making that stuff by himself and maybe just members of his family? What's his distribution like? Does he have a national brand at some point? Or is he just, has a top quality product in Bourbon County itself? What did it look like at the beginning? Like, say, just like, the first 4 or 5 years down the road?
No, good question. Again, with him distilling as early as the late 1830s, he was at this for a good while before he officially opened that distillery. And throughout that time, his name had already become synonymous with good quality whiskey. And it was coming specifically out of Bourbon County. So he again was one of those early pioneers who was bringing this specific type of whiskey to the national audience. And initially, he was gaining regional acclaim, right, in Kentucky and the surrounding regions. But, the main port is ship your whiskey down the Mississippi so it can get to New Orleans so that it can be distributed to all the other states. And what we see documentation and everything is that James A. Miller at the distillery, which he did have, I believe, a brother who worked with him there at the distillery. I know he's the one who took over operations after James Miller passed, but for a brief amount of time. But he had other workers with him, right? And other people helping him out. But yeah, he was, he began shipping his whiskey down that Mississippi River. And we've got documentation pre-1860s of him doing so. And that would lead to his whiskey getting shipped further and wider. Now, I wouldn't say it was a nationally available brand by pre-1860, but it soon followed suit to be. They continued ramping up production more and more, and we can get into that a little bit further. But like I said, he was only added officially at that distillery for just 4 years until tragedy started to strike it. So, yeah.
What was going on with that? What was the history?
So, before we jump into that,
yeah.
Why don't we pull out one of the bourbons and taste it?
Let's do it.
While we're hearing that next
We've
part.
We've got 3. Yeah. Let's
do
that. What do you recommend we start with in terms of the bottles?
Let's start with the small batch bourbon, that cream colored label right there.
Yep. All right. We unwrapped them so that we were ready to go here with the.
Yes.
So these are shot glasses here. These are jiggers over here on these.
Yes. So,
That's fantastic.
and
That's
again,
fantastic.
I what I love about this is that like we with this brand you can zigzag between 1920s to 1880s to this to that because what you're asking about with the cap on the bottle is actually prohibition history there.
Oh,
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
All right,
So
so we're starting with the
there's a
small.
lot to cover 1920s era, and once we get into that, I'll tell you what that's all about.
nice.
Okay,
Um,
so normally Mark will be the kind of the voice behind the bourbon introduction, but we'd love
True.
for you to have the honor introduce the small batch for us for our listeners.
But you have to say it
Sure.
like a cheesy radio announcer, like I do.
Well, no, you don't. No, you
That
don't.
is-
That's only your voice. Yeah.
I think in another life I had a career in radio. I used to do the morning
Yeah.
announcements in high school, and
Yes.
have always had a knack for doing stuff. So
So
I'll give it my best
I
shot.
teach at a high school, right? And so obviously I cannot wear the chicken cock for a number of reasons. I cannot wear the chicken cock around the high school. But the unusual thing is I have students who know that we have a podcast, and they officially, once in a while they'll come into class and they'll be like, "Oh, Dr. Mack, we just heard your most recent episode." I'm like, "Okay, well, we're not going to talk about that because we don't want to talk about bourbon when we're in high school."
right. You're all 18 or under.
Right now, so
Yeah.
bye-bye.
Most of you are under 18. Now we're not talking about
Yeah.
this anymore.
All right. Well, have you introduced the small batch for us?
Yes.
Yes. So, for a while, what we had to offer into the market in terms of a base level bourbon was our 90 proof Kentucky straight bourbon, which is a blue label.
Okay.
It's our number one bestseller. You can find that across the nation at many stores, bars, restaurants, that sort of thing. And what we wanted to do is just make a little tweak to that and go make what we consider to be what is a true small batch whiskey. Now, the term small batch started coming around in popularity in the early 1990s when it comes to whiskey. And it was meant to describe the distillery, the master blender, whomever, selecting a very small number of barrels to craft a small batch whiskey, which would give you great flavor, right? You're able to cherry pick just a finite number of barrels, blend them together.
Sure.
Well, that caught on. And now you've got nationally scaled brands and bottles that say small batch on the label, but that doesn't really mean anything because the government and no one else is policing how many barrels can go into a small batch. It can be 2 or it can be 200. So if they're putting 200 barrels into a batch, there's nothing small about that.
Not really.
So we're getting back to that true intention, right? So our small batch bourbon right here, if you look at that front label, there's going to be 2 numbers on the front. That top number is going to tell you what the batch number is.
Batch number 8. And
batch 8, and then number below that is going to be the amount of barrels we put into that batch.
10.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
It's always 15 or less, and that is small batch whiskey, right?
That's awesome.
No one's policing that. There's no rules to it, but if you're going to make it, might as well be small.
In batch 8, you only have 10 barrels. In batch 8.
That's it. Yeah, every batch should have a slightly different number of barrels that went into it. Always 15 or less, though.
Yeah,
sure.
In addition to that, we cranked the proof up from 90 to 100 proof in your glass there. So I was amazed at just, like I said, I love our blue label bourbon. It's great. It's super well balanced, but cranking up the proof a little bit, making it from a smaller number of barrels, increased viscosity when you're drinking that pour. It increased finish time. It amplified the flavors just by doing those little things. So small batch truly does equal big flavor, in my opinion, for sure.
So we're gonna, before we taste it, I just want to thank you for affirming to us that we have used viscosity many times on our podcast.
We have.
And then we wonder if we're faking out and really actually using a term that we can that legitimately describes the bourbon. And you have just affirmed us as having used that in the proper way.
We've been saying it for 5 years, and then there's a pause, and one of us goes, "Are we talking about motor oil?"
Right.
Hang on, right?
Can we be?
Yeah.
Is this the right word?
Which I used to be in the oil business too, not like oil rigging or anything like that.
Right.
So viscosity is a word I used quite a bit.
Right,
but cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
God, that's.
Ooh,
so we use Nashville wise. We get a lot of questions of, do you guys use the original recipe? Did you find that? Whatever. We've scoured. Unfortunately, we couldn't find that information, so we had to craft our own recipe. but we wanted to do something that kind of paid tribute to what they may have made back in the later 1800s, which would have been a high rye recipe. So we used 21% rye in the mash, 70% corn, 21 rye, 9 malted barley. Another thing I want to point out too is 70% of your flavor in your whiskey is coming from the wood alone. And so we put a lot of care and attention and effort into that process. Every barrel that our bourbon and rye rests in, those logs were hand selected. They're slow growing American white oak trees. They yield a lot more natural wood sugars that you want in your whiskey. So we've hand selected those. We've also done a medium plus toast and level 3 char to each. That's going to caramelize all those natural wood sugars too and give you great flavor.
You know, there's a smoothness for me. There's a smoothness in it, and I think part of that comes from the viscosity. I like the bourbon that lingers in my mouth more from the viscosity, right? It stays there on my tongue. Yep. And obviously we are.
Well, when it draws pictures on the side of the glass too, that's right. Definitely, right. And you've got some viscosity there.
It's interesting, Will, because, when we started this, obviously we're amateur bourbon lovers, but it also has become we've talked about this before.
Yeah,
it's really interesting how our palate has changed over 5 years.
Yeah.
Because we have learned an enormous amount. I mean, we're not distillers. We're not brand ambassadors, right? We are two guys who love the bourbon. We love to read, and we've crafted something that brings us a lot of joy. But then I look to these 5 years, and I'm like, holy crap! I have more ability to discern bourbon than I ever thought that I would in my life.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, like our first 5 episodes were like, wow, this bourbon tastes good, bourbony.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But so let's pick it apart. Like for me, it's a very smooth. I have a lot of friends in Kentucky, and they always describe the good Kentucky hug that you get from the burn in the bourbon, right?
Well, and this has it, but it's delayed.
It's delayed.
It kind of drapes over you like a blanket.
That's right. Are you familiar? Yeah. So I have a really good friend at the University of Kentucky, Landon Borders, who and I don't know if you're familiar with him. He does a lot of work with maybe you'll run into him one of these days, but he used to work for Big Ass Fans, making those huge circulating fans, right? That was the name of the. I thought it was a great. That ranks up there with Chicken Cock, right?
Right, absolutely does.
But now he is one of the. He works at the University of Kentucky, which has a huge partnership program with the bourbon distillers. I'm sure he's talks with your colleagues or somebody in that realm as well.
Yeah. Quite possibly, for sure.
So the smoothness is nice. The wood taste is nice. The sugar is nice.
Mm-hmm. And you really do get that caramel flavor. What else is
for
in
sure?
There?
Yeah.
What else is in there? Yeah.
I can give you power of suggestion, but I always like to let you discern your own tasting notes.
Yeah. No, let's try to.
Well, we get a little bit of the caramel, of course, naturally, which you're going to get from most of those. And is that typical to white oak? Because sometimes we have. Yeah,
for sure. It's all about how those sugars break down. Those molecules break down literally in that American white oak. So you're.
So on my palate, on my tongue, and I'm assuming everybody's tongue is different. Oh, excuse me, I see there.
Not even gonna. Yeah,
I'm getting a nutty flavor in my tasting. On the sides of my tongue.
Is it a little bit nutty?
Right.
I'm getting. See, I'm not really getting that, but what I am getting on my particular palate. For some reason, I keep tasting something vaguely orange, like just a tiny bit of citrus.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, that's one of the common threads that I see throughout our bourbon for sure. Because, when you're making a small batch like this and you're only making it from 15 barrels or less, we're always going for continuity when it comes to what people can expect out of each bottle of small batch. However, there will be nuances, right, where you may taste something more in the butterscotch realm than you did the other batch or what have you. But orange zest, apricot, butterscotch, some caramels, vanillas, of course, and a nice dose of that gentle warming. Oh, not an overbearing one, but all that thought, care, and attention we put into that maturation process shows through on the end. But yeah, I love the sort of orange zest component, which also leads me to say it makes one of the old fashions you can out there.
Yeah. And again, power of suggestion, right? But it's interesting because in the middle of tasting the citrus, I also get the butterscotch for like a second. Like it's very much caramel, and then that starts to change, and I'm getting just a little hint of it, and then it goes real sweet, and I get the butterscotch, and then it goes, and then as the finish, I'm getting more of the orange again.
So let's go with that for a minute.
Yeah.
It's not one of my questions that I have in my list here, but as a taster of bourbon on our end, right? Is there a, like, Mark just mentioned, like, we've got that hint of bourbon. There's almost a journey of taste as it goes along, right? For me, it hits smooth, it hits caramel. I get a nutty flavor, right? Yeah. I get a nutty flavor that's coming from the oak or from the caramel, or maybe it's that citrus blend there. Is there a way that you recommend or that you suggest that one tastes bourbon? Like, what is the journey for you? Does it change at each tasting?
Yeah, I mean, I've always believed in the mantra of bourbon. The best way to drink bourbon is the way you like it, right? Yeah. So there's no right and wrong way. If you're ever going to pick apart a bourbon on the nose and the taste and all that stuff, if I saw somebody, sort of really picking apart our bourbon while they had 15 ice cubes in a glass with it, I wouldn't be too happy because, look, man, you're diluting. We put a lot of thought into what we packaged in this bottle and how we distilled it. And, if you're ever going to pick apart a whiskey, it's got to be neat, and it should be in somewhat of a proper glass of some kind.
Yeah.
For you
Which
to
we
be
have
able
those
to
too.
pick
We have
apart.
those too. Yeah.
Well, and it doesn't have to be a Glencairn, right? But
right.
Just some kind of glassware.
Maybe not a red Solo cup.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I've been there, done that. Trust me.
That's right. That's right.
But look, in those instances, I was probably at a tailgate, or a concert or something like that.
Right.
I wasn't sitting there trying to digest. Is this baked walnut or is this cashew? Or I'm not doing that. Red Solo cup. So, but yeah, I mean, that's my only ask. Past that, the way you want to drink whiskey is however you want to drink, whether that's over the rocks, neat, whatever.
We've noticed that we've been doing this for years, where we'll try it neat, and then we will either put in a single ice cube or just a couple drops of water, something like that. And when we do that, we found with most of them, it completely changes the flavor profile for about 15, 20 minutes. And then things start to kind of settle back to the way that it started. But you put in those couple drops of water and you take a sip, and it's a completely different whiskey.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that either, right? Because you're kind of playing around with, do I like it straight out of the bottle the way it is, unadulterated by water or ice cubes or anything else? Or could this be tamed down a little bit? Are the flavors shining through and the aroma shining through that I really enjoy about this whiskey? And at that point, you can kind of add water and play around with it and do whatever you want. But yeah, for me, if I'm ever picking apart a whiskey, it's out of a proper glass, and it's always neat for sure.
Yep.
So that brings us to the kind of the distilling philosophy. That was one of the questions. I mean, take us through what chicken cock, what the pathway is for your distilling. I mean, obviously you're going to keep your proprietary information, but like what is the overarching umbrella philosophy? What brings us the flavor? What brings us the brand that you share typically in your travels as the brand ambassador?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one. I enjoyed this. I don't remember if this was the one. I have to look. Let me look at our list from the last Bourbon Fest. I don't remember.
Think we tried the small batch. I think we did the small batch.
Let's see what we had. Yeah. Okay. So at the Bourbon Fest, we had the straight, the small batch, the double oak, and the rye. Those were the four that we tried.
Okay.
At the Bourbon Fest that they had out on the table.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, that'd be like our core four is what we call that. All great whiskeys. But in terms of our story distilling philosophy and the kind of product we want to put out, again, Chicken Cock, when our founder, Marty, originally revived this brand, he kind of got everything going around 2012 officially. He had a couple of goals. He wanted to bring this brand back to its home state of Kentucky, which we did officially in 2017. We struck up a collaborative distillation program with Bardstown Bourbon Company. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're fantastic, world-class partners. They do amazing work. They've got great facilities and employees, and our collaborative distillation program that we have with them is awesome. So that officially kind of kicked off in 2017. First barrels were laid down around 2018. So we've chosen a world-class distilling partner there. In terms of how we distill and what we make, again, that high rye content bourbon that we make is, again, to pay homage to what they would have made back in the day. And again, we didn't, not that we necessarily would have used exactly how they made it back then, but we wanted to kind of pay homage to that and make it a high quality brand again in the 21st century in our own way. So that's where, hand selected an American white oak and doing that medium plus toasting to it before it's charred. Those kind of things really help to drive home the quality message, just like it used to back in the 1800s of chicken cock. And then we've got really limited things that we do, of course. For example, Miller's Reserve that we're going to taste. That's unlike anything we've ever done. We've never taken 4 whiskeys from different states and blended them together. So that'd be an example of a very limited example of where we've actually gone out and sourced some other whiskey and blended it with some of our own and done really cool off the beaten path things. The double oak even has a really interesting maturation story. So it's not that we're one note. It's not that everything is 21% rye content bourbon or everything is just simply Kentucky straight rye. We do those great core things and we do them very well. But we also want to show our prowess in blending and creativity and the general badassery that is chicken cock.
That is chicken cock. Yeah.
And I've noticed that particularly in the 21st century, and this isn't just limited to whiskey. Oftentimes, some of the brands of different products that you enjoy the most tend to be the ones that honor tradition in one way or another, while also simultaneously innovating on top of it. Yeah. And that's what I get from what it is that you're saying right now is that you're honoring that tradition, you're honoring that old label and the way that they did things and the philosophy, but you're also showing what you can do.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I think that's quintessential. Because there's a lot of exciting, great things that we can do with this brand and have done with this brand. And we don't necessarily want to be boxed in by only having one singular Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey that we just adjust the proofs on or what have you. We've got a really creative, amazing team. We work with world-class partners. And again, it's all about bringing, we'll go into Miller's, but branching much more of our extensive history into what we do and how we think about innovating too.
Yep. So let's move into our second bourbon. Take us to where we should go on the second bourbon, and then we'll do some more questions on that one.
Yeah. So second one should be your double oak, that black labeled one right there.
Double oak over?
Does that have 10 years on the label or 8?
10 years, yes. 10 years.
10 years. Okay, cool. So just making sure. We did have a slight update to that. It was an 8-year age stated whiskey. We've gone up to 10 years. No increase on price or no new bottling. It's just comes out at 10 years old now. So this one has got. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that we've had a little bit of foreshadowing that the chicken cock label in the distillery was going to run into some troubles. So while we're drinking the second bottle, I feel like that's like the middle of the movie. That's when that's when everything falls apart for Harrison Ford or whatever actor, whatever movie you're watching, right? Let's talk about the troubles with chicken cock while we're enjoying and learning about the double oak.
For sure. Again, James A. Miller had great success, was producing more and more each year. 1860, though, again, as I mentioned, was a pretty tragic year for the guy. He didn't leave his farming roots behind when he started up the chicken cock distillery in 1856. In fact, he built on hundreds of acres worth of farmland that was right on the same grounds as the distillery. He would feed the cows the leftover slop from the mashing and all that stuff. That business, each business fed each other, sort of, so to speak.
Sure.
And so in 1860, unfortunately, though, he had hundreds of hogs die due to a cholera outbreak that had occurred, and that was a big financial hit for him. He then, I'll tie this into Miller's Reserve once we get to it, but there's a story about James A. Miller losing a bunch of whiskey on the Ohio River that happened that year. And again, I'd love to chat with you guys about that once we get to that bottle.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, James A. Miller dies at the age of 42 in 1860. So
all
these things together, there was just financial stuff going on. He passes away. The distillery, the legacy is kind of in jeopardy at that point. So his brother steps in, helps to manage and get together the business, keep it functional. But the main star of the show who comes in is actually his former clerk named George G. White. And George White was very close with James A. Miller before he passed. Decides to continue on with a couple of other investors and keep the train rolling, so to speak. And throughout that time, when George G. White is running the business, is when Chicken Cock truly takes off as a brand. It's in the 1870s when they're shipping whiskey to Canada. They're the first bourbon brand of Bourbon County to do so. They're shipping whiskey to Bermuda and Bremen, all over the place. And, so it wasn't just a regionally available brand, not just a nationally available brand, but a globally available brand at that point. And for the 1870s, 1880s, not everybody can say that, right?
Yeah, no, that's huge.
Yeah. When we get in the 1880s, that financial panic sets in, and Chicken Cock for a brief amount of time is the only functioning distillery in Bourbon County. Yeah. And then 1890, another little snippet. Again, there were a lot of people trying to capitalize off of Miller's Chicken Cock because I say Miller's because George G. White, after James A. Miller passed, put his name on every single advertisement and every bottle that was made because James A. Miller was ultimately the one tied to that quality, that symbolism of quality tied to the brand. So he found out about this brand called Miller's Gamecock that was being made out of Boston, a very subpar cheap whiskey made in somebody's garage out back.
Sure.
Took him to trademark infringement court, won the case handedly because Chicken Cock by that point had already been around for coming up on 40 years. So there's just a lot of turbulence, ups and downs, a lot of successes, lots of things going on from the time that James A. Miller passes in 1860 until about the 1890s. And then we start to see a little bit of ownership change around just shy of the turn of the century. And that leads into a whole other chapter of Chicken Cock.
Oh, my gosh. Hey, it turns out that my grandfather was named George White. I might be the Prince of Chicken Cock. Yeah. Am I a Chicken Cock prince? Is that what's going on?
Maybe so.
Am I a royalty and I didn't even know it?
Maybe so.
There were scriptures foretold when we were doing research. There were scriptures foretold about the king prince, and I think we may have found him. Yeah,
he will know your ways as if born to them.
Great, you're in a garage in the Midwest. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's right. Let's taste it.
Yeah, so let me tell you about this whiskey too. This for a double oak doesn't have your typical double oak maturation story. Most double oak bourbons out there, they're made as a bourbon as normal, and then that producer will then dump that whiskey back into brand new, lightly toasted or heavily toasted or lightly charred barrels, and they get their double oak, right? Yeah. For this one, this was made back in 2014 as a bourbon. It's got the mash bill to be one. 80.5% corn, 11% rye, 8.5% malted barley on the mash. But they ran into an oak shortage that year. There was a lot of rain, snow runoff that oversaturated the ground, and getting heavy mining equipment in there to harvest the amount of American white oak they usually would in that given year. They just couldn't do it. So this bourbon producer was left without brand new barrels to put this whiskey back into. So they had to dump it back into used bourbon barrels. And that's the only reason it's called a Kentucky whiskey instead of a bourbon, is for that reason. This whiskey sat in those used barrels for the first 7 years. And we had an opportunity to acquire the liquid. We knew that we wanted to take it to the next level, though, because it had picked up some color and flavor and everything, but it wasn't to the standard we needed it to be at. So we dumped this back into brand new barrels with a level 4 char, aged them at the top parts of the rick house in Kentucky so they could get all the sweltering heat, soak in all that great flavor from the wood. And after a total of 3 years in that brand new oak, we dumped it out, proofed it at 92. So it's 10-year age stated, 92 proof, double oak Kentucky whiskey.
Yeah. Yeah, and the double oak is clearly darker than the small batch.
Yeah. It's going to be, for a double oak whiskey, it's not as dark as some other popular brands are, because again, those whiskeys went from brand new barrel to other brand new barrel. So they soak in a ton of that color, a ton of that rich oak flavor. Ours is not going to be on that scale. So when you stack it up against our small batch, yes, it's going to be darker, but not leaps and bounds. And I actually really enjoy the fact that while it's a double oak whiskey, it doesn't oversaturate you with a bunch of dry tannins or too much oak presence. It's very well balanced in my opinion for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get an underlying flavor of dark chocolate and maybe a little bit of baking spices on the bottom end of my palate.
Yeah,
right?
it's spicy.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's also very smoky.
Yeah, for sure. So because it's got the high corn recipe, it brings a little bit of brightness to the table.
Yeah.
And I get most times when I taste double oak, there's almost like a cherry rope candy, like a Twizzlers kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of almost like you really got to search for it, but some black tea that's hidden in there. It's almost like a cinnamon red hot candy finish. If you think about that,
that's that kind of that baking spice flavor there. Yeah.
For sure.
The cinnamon's absolutely in there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it brings that nice, rich sort of component to the table for being a double oak for sure.
Tell us about the levels of char.
Levels of char. So
that came out of nowhere.
He said level 4. He said level. Be quiet over here. He mentioned level 4 char.
You're so angry.
And it was just like it's interesting to me because we've talked about char. We've done our research.
Right.
But I always want to hear from I want to hear from the people who are in the trenches for the business.
It was just abrupt, though. I felt like that we should have a spotlight on him when you went, tell us about the char.
Yeah. Good night, Mark.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, in terms of char, like I said, what we do is we first before we char it, we do that medium plus toasting, and that is not to say that we light a flame to that barrel. It just gets to a very high heat to where it can caramelize those natural wood sugars inside the wood.
Sure.
And then we're doing them level 3 because if we did anything more than that, we would start to burn away all that great flavor we just created with that toast.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Really, all the level 3 char is meant to do is just act as a natural filter as that whiskey seeps in and out of that wood and captures all those wood sugars and brings it back with them to the other side. Most distilleries, a lot of large scale ones will just simply do a level 4 char and it's out the door. That sort of your products for the masses and everything are typically just going to have a level 4 alligator char is what they call it because it looks like alligator skin.
Yeah, like on the inside of the yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, by toasting the barrel, by hand selecting the wood that we do, by naturally air drying that wood 9 to 12 months in the open climate, that does a lot too. That helps our whiskey seep further into that wood than it would otherwise if you were to kiln dry it, for instance. So there's a lot of tactics at play, a lot of variables and a lot of science that go into your method and your madness. For do you toast? What level do you toast? Do you char? Not do you char, but what char level do you do? Where do you place those barrels within the rick house? Do you hand select your wood? Do you just use standard stuff? There's all these great things that you can play around with and experiment with in the industry. But one of the biggest by far is maturation.
Well, and that's the thing. I was just going to say it's fascinating. It's always fascinating to me that we have a beautiful liquid here that began its journey in 2014. And now we are enjoying it today with you on the podcast.
Right.
After the world has been through multiple types of things, over these years.
Right.
Been through a lot.
2014, my son was 4 years old. He is now 15.
Right.
It's like those are amazing things that bring a flavor out of a bourbon like this, a whiskey like this, that you don't realize. It's the same with wine, with the French wines or the California wines. Those things sit and age for a period of time, and in 2014 the world was a different place, and here we are enjoying this whiskey today.
Have you seen that video of Orson Welles drunk off his butt?
Yes.
And doing the commercial for Paul Masson?
Yes.
Yeah. Aha, the French. Their champagne is amazing.
Yes.
There's also another amazing champagne in California. Paul Masson makes a... Who am I? Cut, Mr. Wells. Somebody get some water for Mr. Wells, please.
This is a fantastic flavor for me.
This is so good. I mean, it's so
really
rich.
It's rich.
It's richy rich.
Thank you. You know. Yeah, it's a stunner, no doubt, and it's a fan favorite. Anytime we pull that out, anytime we're at an event, people gravitate towards Double Oak, just as is. But I mean, people are always turning away,
Yeah.
going,
Well, I
"Wow,
mean,
that Double Oak! I need to get me a bottle when I get home."
that wood sugar is really strong, right? And but what's different about this one that I'm getting is that um, I am not. It's not covering up everything else. We get the really strong wood sugar, but then I'm also getting other flavors at the same time, and so it really has a lot more nuance than some of the others that I've tried before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I that's one of the reasons why I love our Double Oak, is because I can go back to it time and time again. I've had
Yeah,
plenty of pours of the other Double Oak products that are out there that are popular, and I love them, right? But I can usually only have one of those, and I'm good because it's too overbearing at some point in time with that oak presence, with the tannins, with the
yep,
richness. It just dominates everything.
yep.
And with this, there's so many other great flavors you can focus on too. It's not just about the oak in this one. So
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean by the Twizzler. Although it's funny. I'm getting that on the finish, like on the back end when I've swallowed it. It's then I just get a little bit of the Twizzler right on the end there. That's really
yeah, yeah.
cool.
We're going to bring out the third one here too, which I'm looking forward to. Yeah.
So we've got a little bit more here to finish. Let's finish that. And while we're doing that, let's talk about a little bit more about some of the troubles that the label ran into. And then when we start the third bottle, let's talk about the reemergence of chicken cock as
Yeah,
we're doing the Miller's Reserve.
Yeah.
for sure. Once we get to around the turn of the century, about 1895 or so, George D. White at that point is getting into retirement age. He's a very, very well-to-do businessman at that point. He's a millionaire. And so he decides he's just going to live a quieter life, doesn't want to deal with the distillery anymore, and decides to sell it off to a company called A. Senior and Sons. And they're a smaller company out of Cincinnati,
Mm-hmm.
who acquires the brand and the distillery grounds. They start, producing chicken cock. They start advertising for it, all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, what happens is just 2 or 3 years into that operation, they experience a pretty bad fire. Now, when they came
Oh,
in and acquired the brand, they had already done some fixing up to some of the buildings and the operations and the equipment. And so they were already pretty heavily invested into the business. And when this
uh,
fire occurred, they turned around and said, look, we've just sunk so much money into this. We're only a couple of years in. We have no way to recover this. And so they decided to sell the brand off to what was then called the Whiskey Trust. And if you're not familiar with whiskey history and what that was, it was just a bunch of monopolizers who got together, a bunch of well-to-do guys, and decided they were going to corner the whiskey market. And that came in the
yeah.
fashion of acquiring distilleries large and small, shutting out competitors, doing everything that they could to gain a monopoly in the business. And
Mm-hmm.
they're the ones who acquired the Chicken Cock brand after A. Senior and Sons. So they come in, they repair the fire damage that had been done by A. Senior and Sons, to the point where they built a brand new still house that was 3 stories tall that had an elevator inside. Now, this is turn of the century. Having an elevator anywhere at this point is probably pretty uncommon, let
Yeah,
alone in your still house. They
yeah.
invested pretty heavily as well, even heavier than A. Senior and Sons had. And they get going. Only 2 or 3 years into their operation, a doubler catches fire and saturates the surrounding buildings in flames.
Oh my
So
gosh.
this was even worse example of disaster that had occurred. Um, Again, the financial turmoil that occurred from that because they had invested so much just a couple of years prior was bad, right? And they made the decision at that point, from what I can tell, to just simply age whatever existing barrels were left surviving at
Mm-hmm.
the original Paris, Kentucky plant. They continued producing chicken cock at their other larger Kentucky plant, but the last barrel to roll out of that rick house, one of those original rick houses, was 1914. Once the last barrel rolled out, they sold the original grounds to a sea cleaning company, who was there in operation on those grounds until 1961, when
Uh-huh.
what happened? A fire. Not even a sea cleaning company
Right.
was protected from fire damage there. It's crazy. It's something about those grounds, I guess. But
Wow.
uh, so after they sell off the original grounds in 1914, this is the precursor to Prohibition, when the temperance movement is sweeping through America. It's really doing damage to alcohol sales for sure. And then, of
Sure.
course, 1920, full-blown Prohibition's enacted.
Yep.
And that is typically where brands of Chicken Cock's era story would end. They would go bankrupt. They would have dissolved. They would have got, whatever happened. And again, one of the coolest pieces of our history is that not only Chicken Cock, not only did it survive through Prohibition, it was made during it in two different forms. And that kind of leads into the packaging story, which is just amazing because we pay tribute not just to our extensive history going back to 1856, but that Prohibition history. And there were a couple of ways that Chicken Cock was made during Prohibition. The first way it was made was by a guy by the name of Sam Bronfman, and he owned Distillers Corporation Limited. He was the one who bought out the Seagram's Corporation leading into Prohibition because he was friendly with all the bootleggers of that time, like Al Capone. And so Canada was going into Prohibition before we were here in the United States. So when that was going on, he was smuggling booze up north. When the script flipped, he started bootlegging booze south into America. So he was buying up a bunch of tracts of land along the United States-Canadian border. He started up Distillers Corporation Limited. He started making Chicken Cock as a pure Canadian rye whiskey, and he was packaging pint bottles into tin cans. And these things, if you've ever seen like old tin cans of cigarettes or whatever, they have to cut around them like a can of sardines almost.
Yes.
That's the way that Chicken Cock came during that time. And they were shipping these bottles to the coast of Newfoundland, and they would smuggle them in off the eastern seaboard of the United States. And the coolest place that we found out that Chicken Cock ended up during that time was at the Cotton Club in Harlem, New York. And that's where all the legends played, right?
Yes. Yes.
So we came to find out further that Duke Ellington, actually, when he's speaking about playing at the Cotton Club, I believe his autobiography is Music, My Muse. I might be getting that title wrong, but you can find it in this book. So I'm trying to tie in a book here, guys. I'm trying to tie in.
Thank you. There you go. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
So, but if you look at his memoirs when he's speaking about the Cotton Club, he talks about Chicken Cock, right? He says it was the house whiskey there. It was rumored to cost about $10 to $14 per pint if you wanted one, which is over $200 in today's money. And it was sort of a ceremonious thing there. You would pay the doorman an extra few bucks. He'd sit you at a good, table by the band stage, and he would plop down this exact tin.
No way!
Tin. Look at that.
Yep. And out comes the bottle. So you can see where we got the bottle design from when we revived the brand. This is an exact 1-for-1 with the chicken wire and the crowing rooster. Oh yeah.
Yes, that's great. Look at that.
Yep.
But that tin is amazing.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. So super cool. That bottle and tin travels around me throughout the country. If anybody's ever met me before that's listening, I probably pulled that out, showed it to him, because it's such a cool, rare piece of our history. And again, it just goes to show you that 100 years ago is where we got this bottle design from. 170 years ago is where we got the name from. It's all rooted in history. And it's all about
huge.
So,
it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And real quick, to touch on the other way that Chicken Cock was made throughout Prohibition, there were 6 distilleries in the mid-1920s who got the okay from the government to make medicinal whiskey.
Right.
And so if you were smart in the 1920s, you could have a cough every day of the week because your doctor's going to prescribe you whiskey for anything, right? And you would hand in your prescription to the pharmacist, whatever. They would hand you a bottle that looks like that bottle right there, a Miller's Reserve or a Double Oak, and it's got this 1920s sort of Art Deco sunburst glass.
Yes.
That cap on was it was for ease of use, so you could measure your medicine when you got home. So it's not a shot glass per se. That's to measure your medicine. Yep, it's about an ounce. It's about an ounce and a quarter.
So these are all now on the Tylenol bottles for my kids. You get a little cup on top of that one. And Chicken Cock.
It didn't stop with it may have started with whiskey. It didn't stop with whiskey. Mouthwash, Pepto-Bismol.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one's nice too. This is very nice though too. It's
absolutely
nice.
It's all rooted not just in history but functionality too, right? You can share some shots around the campfire through that.
Yeah.
It's super cool. And then one last quick piece before we kind of go into the modern revival. But once we get out of Prohibition in 1933, things take a turn. Going back to that medicinal phase, when Chicken Cock was being made as this medicinal bourbon, and this is not the case for just Chicken Cock, but many other brands, they had all these barrels that they've been sitting on that they couldn't bottle since before Prohibition was enacted, right? They were sitting on 10, 12, 16-year-old barrels. So they were making Chicken Cock as a very well-aged bourbon. But once we get out of Prohibition, they're like, okay, everybody can buy booze now legally. We have to make as much as we can, but we don't have any old stock to do that with. So how do you do that? You cut corners to mass produce. And
Yeah.
chicken cock very briefly after 1933 was made as a proper bourbon and rye, but that quickly changed. The 1930s brought the Great Depression. The 40s brought World War II. That shifted things for sure. And chicken cock eventually shifted into a blended whiskey. And it was 70% Nutrigrain spirits, which is essentially vodka. And it was 15% bourbon, 15% rye. And it sold for $1.06 a pint. So the value went down, the blend went down, the quality went down. And by 1950, National Distillers, who owned the brand at that time, kind of did a gut check of all the old whiskey brands that they had. They just weren't selling like they had been 20, 30 years before. And they decided to cut a bunch from their lineup at that point in time. So that's where chicken cock falls in, is it was just essentially discontinued from the lineup and not made from 1950 till we revived it, over 60 years later.
Wow. 1950 to over 60 years later. That is an amazing twist.
Yeah.
All right, I finished mine. I finished my double oak. I'm ready to bring out the other one.
All right.
I'm ready to bring out the other one.
Yeah.
So, the revival of chicken cock. And so tonight's bourbon is still Chicken Cock, Miller's Reserve, American whiskey, the famous old brand, established 1856, aged 8 to 10 years, 57.5% alcohol by volume, 115 proof, 4 states, 1 spirit. And that was the part that I really wanted to get out.
That's amazing. Yeah. Laura, introduce that for us. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, going back once again into the history, in 1860, that really bad year for James A. Miller. And I briefly mentioned how, in addition to hundreds of hogs dying due to a cholera outbreak, he lost a bunch of his whiskey. He was shipping 475 barrels down the Ohio River on a steamship. The Ohio makes its way to the Mississippi, makes its way to New Orleans, and then gets distributed, right? So he was shipping a bunch of his coveted whiskey down the Ohio River on the steamship. When that crashed, it was called the A.O. Tyler, the steamship, and went on to crash and sink into an old prior shipwreck in the river. And what happened was all of James A. Miller's barrels sank on board that vessel that were all uninsured. So that was yet another big financial hit for the guy. So you can see why 1860 is such a bad year for Mr. James A. Miller. So what we've done here is we've pretty much, resurrected that liquid from the river in our own way.
Sure.
You're going to see on the back label that we've done something unlike anything we've ever done.
Yeah, there's a map of the Ohio River.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So you're going to see that we blended together 4 different whiskeys, all from states that border that vital trade route, the Ohio River.
Oh, that's so cool.
We have taken 10-year-old double oak whiskey from us in Kentucky. We've taken 8-year-old high rye bourbon from Indiana, 8-year-old wheated bourbon from West Virginia, and 10-year-old wheated bourbon from Ohio, and blended them together.
Oh, that's cool.
Bottled at 115 proof and 8 to 10-year-old blend. This is kind of a brainchild of mine. I'm very proud of how this all came together from start to finish, and our entire team, how we brought this to the table from creative idea and history into an actual amazing liquid. So
is that something that you as the brand ambassador have? So you said that this was your brainchild. So you conceived of this blend, and then as the national ambassador moved forward with that with your team.
Yes. So we were looking for a holiday time release, as we always do every year. We were looking for some kind of unique innovation, and we had an opportunity to kind of do a unique blend and pull together some different components. And that's where it kind of all started is I wanted to tap into our history. I love talking about our history. I'm an amateur historian, so I get really excited and geek out over it. And the opportunity to meld that with an actual piece of innovation is really cool. And so that's where it was all rooted in. And we said, okay, what are some of the states that border the Ohio, and what are some of the components we can put into this, and how old of liquid can we get? And, it kind of went off from there. It became, again, this thing of an idea tapping into our history and an actually great liquid that was all broken down by the innovation, by the percentages of all the different components that are into it, how they play off each other. And it was such a fun process. Now, I am not the sole person who drives innovation or anything like that with the chicken. We are a small but mighty team, but I certainly love to give my voice. Again, I'm I'm Chicken Cock's end customer, really. I've got guilty bottles.
Absolutely.
I've got a ton of relics here behind me. I'm all about it. So the opportunity.
Yeah, I've been looking at those. Yeah.
The opportunity to get my hands on some of our liquid innovation and tie some of the amazing history that I get to tell every day into something we create was super fun. So
that's great. And I mean, whether you're the primary person behind it or you're just on the team, you must have, a ton of pride over the fact that it's been made, it's real, it's on the shelf, and now people get to enjoy it.
Absolutely. And, no matter which brand, I don't want to say no matter which brand, but if this was another brand, let's say, that didn't have the history component or something to it, I would still be absolutely proud of how this all came together, for sure.
Right.
But the fact that I'm getting to kind of, in my own way, put my stamp on this historic story brand, I always say, look, I consider myself to be more of a steward of this brand and a caretaker of this brand than just peddling it. You know what I mean? So to have my mark on it in this way, shape, and form with such a great, unique release that pays tribute to its history is awesome.
Yeah. You know what's immensely important about what you just said, and kind of immensely, I guess, emotional about what you just said, is that you're tied. Now you are tied to that deep history of Chicken Cock, right? Like you now can be part of that story that started, 100 and some years
instead
ago.
of following the story, now you're part of the story.
You're part of the story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Which is super cool, right? It really is.
There's a line here on the back of the bottle. It says, 165 years later, Miller's Reserve reclaims this lost whiskey, blended from the lands that border this vital root of Chicken Cock's rich legacy. That's awesome. That's a really cool sentence.
It's super cool. And what's really interesting too is, and we've talked about this a couple times over the past, actually, couple episodes that we did at the end of season 5. I'm getting a tobacco taste when I'm tasting it. Right? I'm getting
It's so rich.
It's so rich. It's so, and I don't know if it's our palate that has changed over the years. The past few bourbons that I don't remember which ones they were, but I'm getting a tobacco taste. I'm still getting that caramel in there. I'm still getting those deeper flavors, those richer flavors, right?
I definitely taste the tobacco, and then there's and there's plenty of spice, but then there's a fruit in there. I'm not sure if it's like a cherry or a plum, but something like that. It's a darker kind of fruit, and the caramel is just like, it's like a caramel apple, man. It is there.
Yeah.
It is just.
Yeah, it popped, and trying all these individual components was great too, because as you're mentioning and going through all these tasting notes, again, that just shows you all the different complexity and variances in all these components and how he brought them together.
Yeah.
So you're getting, that 10-year-old double oak whiskey that spent 7 years in used barrels and 3 years in new. You're getting that 10-year-old wheated bourbon from Ohio had such a distinct pop of, I believe it's like that tobacco and sort of sweet cherry note that I get out of that.
Yep.
The other two bourbons were delicious. You got the high rye component in there, so you get that little bit of white pepper, sort of borderline almost black pepper spice peeking through. And it's all those components coming together. So, this was just fun enough as is to build this out from that 4 states based on the Ohio River and everything. But the way that each of these components came together was even more fun to see once the end product came out.
I didn't quite hear what you said before, but when you mentioned the spice and the white pepper, this does taste to me, and maybe you already said it, but I almost get like a hint of like Chinese 5-spice, where you've got all those different things kind of going on all at the same time. You've got the white pepper, the cinnamon, the anise, the nutmeg.
Yeah, but it's not even a caramel for me. It's more like a toffee flavor.
Yes, it's definitely a dessert or a candy,
like a candied flavor.
Yeah. Like a 100-year-old candy.
Yeah. That story is super cool. Will, like, so. Do you mind sharing, like, I don't know, when did you conceive of that idea? How did you conceive of that idea?
It's the A.O. Tyler story is actually something that I bring up as I'm bringing people through the history of Chicken Cock, which I've done more times than I can count at this point. And so it's always been something that I find really interesting to speak about because it helps to tie into this is when it was incepted. Just 4 years later, look at all this bad stuff that happened. It's an inflection point, right, in the story. And so I'd always mention it. It was always tucked away. It's always something I bring out when I'm speaking to people. But we had this opportunity to blend together, some whiskey stock that we had with our existing, and it built off from there. I said, okay, well, instead of just that one component, let's build this into because we're already starting with Indiana. I think it had been so we already have that component. We're already from Kentucky, so we've got that component checked. Right. And now we need to identify a couple more components that border the Ohio River. What are the most realistic prospects? We want to keep the age statement at a high level. We want the proof to be high. We want the components to work well together, of course. But one of the most vital pieces is that all these components come from those bordering states. So
sure,
that's kind of how that conversation started. Once we realized that, hey, this is a realistic opportunity. We have some great liquid that we can pull together for this. It was off the races from there.
That's amazing. I love that part to the story, that you have become part of the history of chicken cock, right? I think maybe you don't hear that often, but I think that's a chapter in the story that goes back to the original blenders, right? And that's
absolutely. And when you have a hand in something like that, you're kind of immortalized now, right? Here's a
think about that. That's right.
20 years from now, there's going to be somebody who's been holding on to this bottle.
That's right.
And they're trying to decide, do I drink it or do I sell it? And you're part of the reason why they have it in the first place.
20 years from now, when we're in season 26,
right,
we're going to be like, we talked to Will Woodington, who had this story, right?
When we're in season Alzheimer's, and I can't remember my name.
That's right. When I don't know what bourbon is anymore.
Right,
and that's
exactly.
Exactly.
I keep asking for my medicine, and you keep feeding me bourbon.
That's right. Here's
out of the shot glass. That's right.
Here you go. It's medicinal. Drink it.
That's right.
Yeah. Remember, the guy told us it's medicinal.
That's right. We made it.
Yeah.
We made it.
No, too funny.
These three bourbons have been exceptional. I think what we're going to do is we're going to bring this particular episode to an end. And then we're gonna take a minute, and then we're gonna go into the oops episode like we talked about, so that we respect your time.
And we'll dig deeper into Miller's Reserve.
So I'm gonna bring out a closing question to you for this episode, and then we'll end it. When somebody pours a glass of chicken cock, right? What do you hope they feel? Not just taste, but feel in the chicken cock brand.
That's a good one.
That's a good question.
That's final thought worthy.
That's final thought.
Yeah.
It is. For me, the reason why whiskey has brought me to where it is, the reason why I'm so passionate about chicken cock and everything is because I've drank so much whiskey where my key thing is be in the moment. I think that being in the moment and sharing that glass and realizing your surroundings and everything, it's just really special. And I think that, that's the way you treat great whiskey too, which chicken cock obviously is just soak in where you are and who you're with at that time. I think that's one of the most special things that whiskey has brought to me for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I would say that's very much
from you. Yeah.
I would say that's very much like what you and I have done from the very beginning.
Yeah.
It was sharing that bottle of whatever we had and telling stories and talking about our lives around a fire pit.
Yep.
And really kind of just being in that moment and disconnecting ourselves from everything that was happening with the pandemic at the time. So I totally get that, and I'm on board because I think that's how we got started.
That's how we got started. And I think my final thought is just the rich history of chicken cock that I did not know before myself.
Yeah.
And I think what you have done is enriched our knowledge as podcasters, but also as people who, as two guys who just really enjoy time spent with a bourbon.
Yeah.
Talking about it, tasting it, living it, enjoying it, and then sharing it with the people who listen to the podcast.
And again, just to reiterate, tighten that up. This Miller's Reserve, this is damn good.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna rank that one up there. So we're going to bring the episode to a close. So we're going to thank Will Woodington for being with us tonight on Beards, Books, and Bourbon. We are launching in season 6 to really highlight the people who make these amazing liquids that we enjoy on our podcast.
Absolutely.
And that so many get.
Along with the amazing authors.
That's
the
right.
Books that we are reading.
That's right. That's right. And people who are able to share a story, and around that story are the books and the bourbon, right, that make that story.
Because what is better in life than a fine beverage, a fine book, a campfire, and a good friend?
That's right. That's right. And that's what we aim to share on Beards, Books, and Bourbon. So make sure you check us out on all of your social media platforms. We are on TikTok at BooksBeard. We are on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, at BooksBeard. We are on Facebook. Make sure you follow us all over the place. Check us out.
We're on the Apple Podcast, the Amazon Music, the Upcast, the Downcast, the Leftcast, the Rightcast, the Outcast, the Incast.
We would love for you to leave some stars for us. Will, if you head over to podcast, leave us some stars, leave us some reviews. We'd love that. It helps us move up the list in our podcast journey. And Will, we thank you for being with us tonight. You're spending time away from your family, away from your work, and we appreciate you being with us tonight on Beards, Books, and Bourbon.
Yes.
Oh, fellas, this has been incredibly fun. You two were a ton of fun to hang out with and chat with, and I can't thank you enough, just for all the great questions, the excitement, all the inquisitiveness into our history and what we're doing. And again, super proud of the work that we're doing, and so happy to share with fellas like you. So cheers to you guys. Thanks so much for having me on.
Cheers to you, Will. Thank you so much.
What an awesome evening together. And remember, if you're not listening to Beards, Books, and Bourbon,
you're doing it wrong.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.